Welcome to ESL Listening Practice.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So imagine this. You're standing at a really busy coffee shop, maybe in London, or you're sitting in a high-pressure Zoom meeting with international colleagues.
Right. Highly stressful situations.
Exactly. And someone asks you a really simple question. In your head, you know the answer perfectly. You can see the words in your native language so clearly.
But as you open your mouth...
Yes, your brain just suddenly freezes. Like, the English words just won't come out.
Your heart starts beating faster.
Yeah, an awkward silence fills the room, and you end up just, smiling and nodding, and you're just incredibly frustrated with yourself.
It's a feeling almost every English learner knows way too well. You have the vocabulary locked somewhere in your brain, but you just can't reach it when you actually need to speak.
Yeah, and you want to improve your fluency, but you feel completely stuck.
Right. And when we talk to our students about why they feel stuck, the answer is, it's almost always the same. They say, I don't have anyone to practice with. I don't live in an English-speaking country, and I just don't have a native-speaking partner.
Right. It becomes this massive roadblock for people. They just stop practicing altogether.
Which is such a shame.
It is. They think fluency is this magical thing that only happens if you move to New York or if you can afford to pay for expensive private tutors 3 times a week.
But, based on our research into how the adult brain actually acquires language and our years of teaching these concepts, we have some really incredible news for you today.
Yes, we do. You do not need a partner to improve your spoken English.
Absolutely not.
In fact, you can make massive, noticeable progress completely by yourself, right in your own home.
You're completely capable of guiding your own learning. You can build that quick reaction time, that confidence, and that natural flow without ever needing another human being in the room.
So our goal today is to give you a very specific set of tools. We're going to break down the science of how your brain learns to speak and give you methods you can start using the exact minute this audio ends.
Let's jump right in. Let's attack that big problem right away. The idea that you need a native speaker to practice.
Right. If we want to prove you don't need a partner, let's start with the absolute most available person in your life, which is, yourself.
Exactly. The most powerful method you can start with today is what we call the inner voice, or really simply just talking to yourself out loud.
It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it?
It does, but it's incredibly effective because it directly attacks the biggest barrier to fluency, which is the translation process.
Oh, the dreaded translation delay.
Right. Let's look at what's actually happening in your brain during that frozen moment in the coffee shop we talked about.
Okay, break it down for us.
So when someone speaks to you in English, your brain first receives the audio. And if you aren't fully fluent yet, your brain takes that English sentence and secretly translates it into your native language so you can understand it deeply.
And that takes a fraction of a second. But then it gets much worse.
Exactly. Because then you have to form your reply. But you form your reply in your native language first.
Right. Your brain builds this perfect, clever response in Spanish or Japanese or Arabic.
Yeah, and then you have to run that thought back through your mental dictionary, translating it word for word into English, hoping you get the grammar right before you finally, push the air out of your lungs and actually speak.
We call this the translation delay, and honestly, it's exhausting just thinking about it.
It really is.
By the time you've done all that mental gymnastics, the conversation has moved on. The person you're talking to is probably looking at their watch.
Yeah, and this is exactly why speaking to yourself out loud at home is so critical. The goal of this exercise isn't to have perfect grammar. The goal is to force your brain to practice thinking directly in English. You are cutting out the middleman entirely.
When you narrate your day out loud, you're training your brain to just skip that translation step. You're building a direct highway between a thought and the English words for that thought.
Now, wait a minute. I can already hear the objections from the people listening.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Right. If I'm an intermediate learner, a B2 learner, and I start talking to myself while walking around my apartment, isn't that just a little bit crazy?
Yeah, people worry about that.
My family or my roommates are going to think I've completely lost my mind if they hear me having a full conversation with my coffee machine.
It definitely feels strange at first. I get it. But think about what's already happening inside your head. You talk to yourself in your native language all day long.
That's true.
You plan your day. You worry about work. You notice things out the window. We're just asking you to take that internal monologue, push it out into the air, and change the language.
And if you're worried about your roommates, just do it where you have total privacy.
Right. Do it in the shower. Do it while you're driving your car to work. The car is actually like the perfect language laboratory.
Let's give our listeners a concrete example of what a B2 level inner monologue should sound like.
Good idea.
We're not talking about absolute beginner phrases like, I am opening the door, I see a dog.
No. If you're an intermediate learner, you want to narrate your actual complex thoughts.
So let's say you're getting ready for work in the morning. It might sound something like this. I really need to finish that marketing report by noon today, but I'm completely exhausted.
Let's see if there's any coffee left in the kitchen. Huh. Of course not. My roommate finished it and didn't buy more.
It's like I'm making a fresh pot. I hope the traffic isn't terrible today. I can't afford to be late for the 9 a.m. meeting.
That's a perfect example. And notice the complexity of what you just did there. You used the future tense, you expressed frustration, you used phrasal verbs, you made predictions about the traffic.
You're doing all the things you would do in a real conversation, but you're doing it in a completely safe environment.
And that concept of a safe environment is huge. Think of an athlete like a professional tennis player.
Okay, yeah.
Before they walk out onto the center court for a big championship match, they don't just sit in a chair and then suddenly start sprinting at maximum speed.
No, they're in the locker room stretching. They're doing practice swings.
Exactly. They're warming up their muscles. Speaking to yourself out loud in your kitchen is exactly that. You're warming up your English muscles without the intense pressure of a real match.
Because there's no opponent, there's no pressure to be perfect. And this brings us to the most important rule of the inner voice method. You absolutely cannot worry about mistakes.
Oh, fear is the ultimate killer of fluency.
It is. Fear makes you hesitate. Fear makes you quiet.
It's the reason you freeze up in the coffee shop. You're terrified the barista will judge your accent or notice that you used the wrong preposition.
Precisely. But when you're alone in your car, who is judging you? The steering wheel doesn't care if you use the present perfect tense incorrectly.
The shower head isn't going to laugh at your pronunciation of a difficult word.
Right. By speaking alone, you completely remove the fear of judgment. You create a psychological safe zone where your only job is just to let the words flow. You're teaching your brain that speaking English isn't dangerous.
Okay, I love this, and I completely agree that removing fear is step one. But I have a serious pushback here.
Okay, let's hear it.
If I'm driving in my car, talking to myself in English, and I'm making grammatical mistakes or pronouncing words wrong, and there's no teacher sitting next to me to correct me, aren't I just reinforcing my own bad habits?
That is a very common worry.
How do I actually improve my accuracy if I'm the only one in the room?
That is the exact question every smart learner asks at this point. And it's true. If you only ever speak to yourself, you get very confident, but you might get confident at making mistakes.
Right.
You need a way to check yourself. You need to become your own teacher. And the way you do that is by recording your voice.
Recording yourself. This is where things get a little uncomfortable for people.
Very uncomfortable. But this is the bridge between just speaking freely and actually speaking correctly.
So how does it work?
The concept is simple, but the application requires focus. You choose a specific topic, you speak into the voice memo app on your phone for 1 to 2 minutes, and then you have to sit down and listen back to what you just said.
Let's break down exactly how a listener should do this today. First, picking a topic. We recommend avoiding anything incredibly complex or abstract for this specific exercise, unless, you need it for your job.
Yeah, if you try to talk about the political economy of the 19th century without a script, you're going to stumble, get frustrated, and just quit.
Keep it grounded in your reality. Good topics are things like the plot of my favorite movie, my exact daily routine, or the last vacation I took.
Let's model this. Imagine our listener decides to talk about their last vacation. They sit down, they open the app, and they hit the red button.
Okay.
They haven't written a script. They're just pulling the memories from their brain and trying to explain them in English. It might sound a bit messy.
Right. It might sound something like, last summer, I went to the mountains with my brother. We drove for 6 hours. The weather was very cold, but the hiking was nice.
We stay in a small cabin near a lake. Every morning we ate breakfast and then walked in the forest. I really enjoyed the fresh air. It was a very relaxing trip.
Okay, so they spoke for about 45 seconds there. Now comes the hard part. They stop the recording and they press play.
And when you listen to your own recording, you're no longer the student. You have to put on the hat of the English teacher.
And to be a good teacher to yourself, you need to listen actively. Based on linguistic research, we know there are 2 key questions you need to focus on while you listen.
Right. Question 1 is my pronunciation clear? And question 2 is, am I speaking smoothly?
Let's look at that first question. Is my pronunciation clear? Because here's a really fascinating thing about the brain. Your passive knowledge of English, the English you understand when you read or listen, is much higher than your active knowledge, the English you can actually produce.
Yes, so true.
So when you listen back to that recording, you're going to hear mistakes that you didn't even realize you were making in the moment.
Exactly. While you were speaking, your brain was using like 90% of its energy just trying to remember the vocabulary word for cabin or forest.
It didn't have any energy left to monitor your pronunciation or your grammar.
But when you listen back, all that mental energy is freed up, you're relaxed, you're just listening.
So sitting there listening to the recording, the learner suddenly realizes, wait a minute, I said we drove. That's wrong. The past tense of drive is just drove. I don't need the D at the end.
Or they might notice, when I said we stay in a small cabin, I forgot the ED for the past tense. I should have said stayed.
You catch your own errors because your ears actually know better than your mouth does.
And that covers accuracy and pronunciation. But the second question is just as critical for fluency. Am I speaking smoothly?
What exactly does it mean to speak smoothly? Because we aren't robots. Even native speakers pause and say,
True, native speakers use filler words all the time. But speaking smoothly means you have a general fluidity to your thoughts. It's about how you manage the empty spaces.
Okay.
When you listen to your recording, pay very close attention to the gaps. Are you pausing for 5 full seconds in the middle of a sentence because you lost a word?
Are you saying or heavily between every single thought?
In that vacation example, there were a few hesitations. We drove and then walked. If a learner hears a lot of those long, awkward pauses in their recording, what's the next step? Do they just feel bad about it and move on?
Absolutely not. That recording just gave you a map of exactly where your brain struggles. So you delete that first recording, you take a deep breath, and you hit the red button and do the exact same topic again.
Oh, you do the same topic immediately?
Immediately. Because the second time around, your brain doesn't have to search as hard for the vocabulary.
Right. You already know you're going to talk about the cabin and the forest.
So this time, your brain can focus on the grammar and the fluidity. You'll naturally speak a little faster. You'll remember to say drove instead of droved.
And if you do it a third time, the story will flow out of you almost like a native speaker. You're training your brain's retrieval speed.
Now, we really have to acknowledge the elephant in the room here. Almost everyone, every single human being on Earth, hates hearing their own recorded voice.
Native speakers hate it too.
I remember the very first time I recorded audio for a project. I listened back and I honestly wanted to hide under my desk. I thought, is that really what I sound like? My voice is so annoying.
It's a genuinely uncomfortable experience.
It really is.
Yeah.
So why should our listeners push through that discomfort?
Because you can't fix what you can't see. In this case, what you can't hear. Think about waking up in the morning and getting ready for work. You walk into the bathroom and look in the mirror. You might realize your hair is completely messy or, I don't know, you have toothpaste on your chin.
You had no idea until you looked in the mirror. You couldn't fix it without that reflection.
That's entirely true. The reality in your head didn't match the reality on the outside.
Right. And your voice works the exact same way. The voice you hear inside your head when you speak is a lie.
It is.
The sound waves are vibrating through the bones of your skull, making your voice sound deeper and richer to you than it actually is. It also masks your pronunciation errors.
The recording is the truth. It's an audio mirror.
Yeah.
If you refuse to look in the mirror, you're going to walk out into the world with messy hair.
And if you refuse to record yourself, you're going to walk into conversations completely blind to the habits that are making you hard to understand.
That's a really powerful way to look at it. The recording tells the truth. Once you accept the temporary discomfort of hearing your own voice, it quickly becomes the absolute fastest way to correct your own mistakes.
So let's look at where we are so far. You're talking to yourself to build confidence and remove fear. You're recording yourself to find your mistakes and practice fluidity.
But there's a vital piece of the puzzle still missing.
Okay, what are we missing?
Well, recording yourself is fantastic for spotting errors. You can hear that you're this sound and that sounds too much like a D. You know it's a mistake.
Okay.
But knowing you're making a mistake doesn't automatically teach you how to fix it. If you've never physically learned how to make that perfect the sound, playing your own bad recording over and over won't teach it to you. To know what perfect natural English actually sounds and feels like, you have to borrow the voice of a native speaker.
And this leads us to one of the most highly regarded techniques in language learning. We call this stealing the rhythm, but its formal name is shadowing. This is how diplomats and advanced polyglots refine their accents.
So what exactly is shadowing?
Shadowing means listening to a short audio clip, like a podcast or a YouTube video, and speaking out loud at the exact same time as the speaker.
You repeat what they are saying immediately, just a fraction of a second behind them.
You are following their voice like a physical shadow follows a person walking down the street. As soon as the speaker forms a word, you form the same word. You are essentially speaking over them.
Let's really dig into the mechanics of why this works. Why is this active shadowing so much better than just sitting on the couch drinking tea and passively listening to an English audio clip?
Passive listening is great for vocabulary and comprehension, but shadowing is a physical exercise. The key benefits are that it completely transforms your pronunciation, your natural speaking style, and most importantly, your rhythm.
Let's talk about that word rhythm. For our intermediate learners listening right now, what do we actually mean by the rhythm of English? Because a lot of people think having a good accent just means pronouncing individual letters correctly.
Right, pronouncing letters is only half the battle. Every language on earth has its own unique music, its own beat.
Some languages, like Spanish or Japanese, are syllable timed. They can sound very even, like a metronome, da-da-da-da-da. Every syllable gets roughly the same amount of time.
But English is a stress-timed language. It goes up and down, fast and slow.
Right. English has stressed words, the important ones carrying the meaning, and unstressed words, the grammar words that just glue the sentence together.
We punch the important words with our voice, and we completely swallow the small words.
Exactly. For example, let's take a simple sentence. A learner who doesn't understand English rhythm might read every word with the exact same energy and length.
They might say, I am going to the store to buy some bread.
It sounds robotic. It's difficult for native speakers to process because we rely on the rhythm to tell us what's important.
But a native speaker naturally compresses the grammar words and hits the meaning words. A native speaker says, I'm going to the store to buy some bread.
The words to thee and some almost disappear. They get mushed together.
And that is exactly what shadowing teaches you. When you shadow, you are forced to copy that exact rhythm. You can't just read the transcript at your own pace. You have to match the music of the speaker's voice.
When their voice rises at the end of a question, your voice must rise.
It reminds me of learning to sing along with your favorite song on the radio. When you love a song, you don't just read the lyrics flatly off a piece of paper.
No, you listen to the artist and you sing with them.
You mimic their emotion. You learn exactly when they take a breath, when they hold a long note, and when they sing quickly. You absorb the soul of the music.
That's exactly what you're doing with shadowing, but for everyday speech. You're learning the melody of English. And there's a deeply physical, anatomical reason why this is necessary.
Explain that.
When you've spent 20 or 30 years speaking your native language, the muscles in your face, your jaw, your lips, and your tongue have literally grown accustomed to very specific movements.
Yeah.
Your brain is deeply carved neural pathways for those movements.
Your mouth is basically set in its ways.
Yes. And speaking English requires your mouth to make completely new shapes. Your tongue has to hit the roof of your mouth in places it's never touched before. Your lips have to round in ways that feel strange. It is quite literally a physical workout for your face.
So when you shadow a native speaker out loud again and again, you are forcing those muscles to form new shapes in real time. You're building physical muscle memory.
You're thickening the motor pathways in your brain so that when you need to use those sounds in a real conversation, your mouth already knows the choreography. It doesn't have to guess.
But there is a massive warning we need to give our listeners here. A trap that almost everyone falls into when they try shadowing for the first time.
Yes, the speed trap. If you're going to try this, you must start with short and slow audio.
If you take away nothing else from this section, remember that. Do not go to YouTube, find a fast-paced action movie scene where people are arguing and talking over each other, and try to shadow it.
It will be a total disaster. Your brain won't be able to process the words fast enough. Your tongue will literally tie itself in knots, and you will feel so frustrated that you'll convince yourself you can't speak English.
Start with materials designed for learners or clear professional audio. Find a speaker whose voice you actually enjoy listening to. Maybe someone who speaks deliberately and clearly.
And you don't need to shadow a whole hour-long clip. Take a 10-second or 20-second clip. Listen to it once. Then try to shadow it.
Rewind it and shadow it again. Do that 10 times on the exact same 20-second clip. You will be amazed at how much your pronunciation improves on just those few sentences.
Okay, so shadowing is incredible for your accent and your rhythm. It teaches you how to sound natural, but life isn't pre-recorded. You also need to know what words to say when you're interacting with real human beings in the real world.
Which brings us to our fourth method. We call this stepping onto the solo stage. If you want to prepare for real conversations, but you're alone, you need to do role plays.
This means creating practical, real-world conversations in your living room by acting out both sides of the dialogue.
This is all about anticipating the situations you are actually going to face in your life and practicing the scripts.
Let's do some extended examples here so our listeners can see exactly how much detail they should be putting into these role plays. It shouldn't just be one question and one answer. You want to build a whole scene.
Let's start with a scenario almost everyone faces dealing with a problem at a restaurant or a coffee shop.
Okay, I'll play the barista behind the counter, and you play the customer. But remember, the B2 learner at home will be physically changing positions and changing their voice to play both characters. They're having a conversation with themselves.
Right, so I'm in my kitchen. I step forward to the imaginary counter. Hi there, I'd like to order a large iced latte, please.
Then I shift my weight, act like I'm typing on a register, and say, all right, a large iced latte. What kind of milk would you like with that?
I switch back to the customer. Oat milk, please. Oh, and can you make sure there's no classic syrup in it? I just want it unsweetened.
Switch back to the barista. No problem. Large iced oat milk latte, unsweetened. That'll be $4.50. Your name for the order.
It's Alex, thanks.
Now, let's pause there. That's a great basic interaction. But to really prepare yourself, you should role play the complications. What happens when things go wrong?
Oh, that's where the real panic sets in.
Let's keep the scene going.
Yeah.
Imagine the barista hands you the drink and it's wrong.
Okay, I take a sip. I realize it's sweet. I have to go back to the counter. This is a high anxiety moment for language learners. I step up and say, excuse me, I'm so sorry, but I think this has syrup in it. I ordered it unsweetened.
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Let me remake that for you right away. Did you say oat milk or almond milk?
Customer, oat milk, please. Thank you so much.
By acting out the problem, you are removing the panic that happens when things don't go perfectly in real life.
Yeah.
You've already physically practiced the phrase, excuse me, I'm so sorry, but your brain knows how to navigate the conflict politely.
Let's tackle a much higher stakes scenario, a job interview.
Oh, yes.
If you are interviewing for a job in English, the stress levels are just through the roof. Practicing the interview alone, out loud, is the best way to lower your heart rate. Let's build out a challenging interview scenario. You be the manager.
All right. I'm looking over a resume. Well, it's great to meet you. I see you've got solid experience in marketing. Can you tell me about a time when a project didn't go according to plan and how you handled it?
Oh, the classic behavioral question. Now I switch to the applicant. I sit up straight, project confidence, and say, absolutely. Last year, my team was launching a new social media campaign, but our main graphic designer got sick 2 days before the deadline. We were missing crucial visuals.
Manager, that's a tough situation. What did you do?
Applicant. Instead of panicking or missing the deadline, I quickly organized a meeting with the remaining team members. I took the initiative to use a basic design software I was familiar with to create temporary graphics. They weren't perfect, but they allowed us to launch on time. When the designer returned, we updated the graphics. It taught me how to adapt quickly under pressure.
That is a phenomenal practice session for a B2 learner. Notice what you're doing. You're organizing a narrative of the problem, the action you took, and the result.
By practicing this out loud alone, you can stumble over your words, realize you forgot the word for initiative, look it up, and try again.
Now, I can totally hear a frustrated learner pushing back here. They might say, look, this is all just pretend. If I'm playing both people in the role play, how do I actually know what the other person's going to say? I'm just guessing.
What if the real hiring manager asks a completely different question and all my practice is useless?
It's a very fair concern. But the reality is that human society operates heavily on scripts. Conversations, especially transactional ones, are highly predictable.
That's true.
If you walk up to a stranger in an airport and ask where the taxi stand is, you know their answer is going to contain directional vocabulary. Go straight, pass the baggage claim, exit through those doors on your left.
Exactly. The barista is always going to ask about size, temperature, milk, and payment. The interviewer is always going to ask about your experience, a challenge you faced, your strengths, and your weaknesses.
Yes. So even if they don't use the exact words you practiced, your brain is already warmed up to the topic. You've primed your mental vocabulary.
When they start speaking, you aren't starting from zero. You're already in the right context, which means you'll understand their unpredictable words much faster. You're building a mental library of social situations.
Okay, so role-playing is fantastic for the structured parts of life. Ordering food, doing interviews, getting directions.
Right.
But what about the unstructured parts? Sometimes you aren't following a script. Sometimes you're just sitting at a dinner party or chatting with a colleague before a meeting, and you just need to talk freely about a topic or describe something you saw.
That requires a different kind of mental flexibility. And that brings us to our fifth method, which we call painting with words or describing photos.
When you need to train your brain to just talk freely and pull random vocabulary on demand, looking at a photo and describing it out loud is a surprisingly deep and challenging exercise.
It sounds deceptively simple. You look at a picture on your phone or in magazine and you just start talking about it. But we aren't talking about making one sentence and stopping. We want to show you how a B2 learner can turn a simple photo into a 2-minute monologue.
Let's use an example. Imagine a photo you scroll past on social media. It's a picture of a woman sitting alone in a modern cafe. She's holding a coffee cup and looking intently at her laptop.
Okay, got the image.
If a beginner looked at this, they might say, there is a woman. She is in a cafe. She has a computer and coffee.
That's accurate, but it's very basic. For an intermediate learner, we want to push the boundaries of your grammar and vocabulary. We have 3 specific rules to expand this exercise. Rule 1 is using different tenses. Rule 2 is adding microscopic details. And Rule 3 is giving personal opinions or deductions.
Let's walk through how to apply these. First, using different tenses. The photo itself is a frozen moment in the present, but you have an imagination. Use it to practice the past and the future.
Ask yourself, what happened an hour before this photo was taken? What is going to happen in 10 minutes?
Right. So looking at the woman with the laptop, I might say, before she arrived at this cafe, she probably woke up early and had a stressful commute because her hair looks a bit messy from the wind.
She must have ordered her coffee immediately when she walked in. After she finishes whatever she's working on, I imagine she's going to pack up her bag, rush out the door, and head to a very important meeting.
Look at the grammatical structures you just forced your brain to use. You use the simple past with woke up, you use modal verbs for deduction with must have ordered, and you use the future with is gonna pack up. You turned a static image into a grammar workout.
The second rule is adding microscopic details. Don't just look at the main subject. Look at the corners of the photo. Describe the textures, the lighting, the weather outside.
So instead of just saying she has coffee, you dig deeper.
I would look closely and say the cafe has a very industrial design. The table she's sitting at looks like reclaimed wood, and there are exposed brick walls behind her. The coffee cup is a dark ceramic green, and I can see steam rising from it, catching the morning light coming through the large glass window. Outside, the street looks wet, so it must have been raining recently.
You're really painting a picture now.
Yep.
You're accessing highly descriptive B2 level vocabulary.
Finally, the third rule, giving opinions and making deductions. Read the emotion of the image.
Looking at her face, I'd say, she seems incredibly focused, almost tense. Her shoulders are hunched up toward her ears, and she's leaning very close to the screen. In my opinion, she's probably dealing with a crisis at work. Maybe she's reading an email from an angry client. She looks like someone who really needs to take a deep breath and maybe take a break.
By combining those 3 elements, tenses, details, and opinions you just practiced, storytelling, descriptive vocabulary, and emotional expression, all from one random photo.
Think of it like being a sports commentator on television. The commentator watches the football game and never stops talking. They describe every pass, every player's expression, the weather on the field.
You're doing the exact same thing, but you are the commentator for a still image. It trains your brain to translate visual input into English words instantly.
And we really need to emphasize to our listeners that this isn't just a fun little game. If you ever plan to take an official English proficiency test, like the IELTS or the TOEFL exam, this is exactly what they test you on.
Oh, absolutely.
In the speaking sections of these exams, the examiner will literally hand you a photograph and say, please describe what is happening in this picture and what you think about it.
They do that specifically because it's impossible to memorize a script for it. It proves whether or not you have actual fluid command of the language. If you practice describing a photo in your living room for 3 minutes every day, those exams will feel like a walk in the park. You'll be over-prepared.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. We've given you 5 highly effective, scientifically backed tools that you can use entirely on your own.
You have the inner voice to eliminate fear and the translation delay. You have the audio mirror of recording yourself to find your mistakes.
You have shadowing to steal the rhythm and build muscle memory. You have role-playing to prepare for predictable scripts. And you have describing photos to practice spontaneous, free-flowing vocabulary.
They are all phenomenal methods. But, and this is a massive but, I have a warning for everyone listening. None of these tools will work. Not a single one of them will make you fluent unless you understand and apply the 6th and final rule, the secret ingredient that makes language acquisition possible.
And that ingredient is consistency. You must commit to regular daily practice.
It sounds like typical teacher advice, but we need to explain the actual neuroscience behind why this is true. The fundamental rule of language learning is this: short, daily practice is infinitely better than long, exhausting sessions once a week.
10 to 15 minutes a day will completely change your English. Studying for 3 hours on a Sunday will do almost nothing.
Let's talk about how memory works. Your brain is an incredibly efficient, energy-saving machine. Its primary goal is survival. Every single day, your brain is bombarded with millions of pieces of information.
To survive, it has to decide what to keep and what to throw away. The way it decides is by looking at frequency. How often do I use this information?
So imagine you sit down on a Sunday afternoon and you study English grammar for 3 hours. You feel incredibly productive, but then Monday comes and you don't look at English. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday pass. You're working, you're living in your native language.
What does your brain do during that week? Your brain looks at the English words you learned on Sunday and says, well, we haven't needed this information for 5 days. It must not be essential for our survival.
I'm going to delete this to make room for my grocery list and my work project.
By the time next Sunday rolls around, you've forgotten 70% of what you studied. You are constantly taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
But when you practice for just 15 minutes every single day, you hijack that system. You are sending a daily signal to your hippocampus, which is the part of the brain responsible for memory.
You are telling it, hey, we use this English data every 24 hours. This is vital for our survival. Do not delete this. Keep it at the very front of my mind.
Think about brushing your teeth. If you brush your teeth for 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes at night every single day, your teeth stay perfectly healthy. The consistency maintains the system.
But imagine someone who says, I'm just too busy to brush my teeth from Monday to Saturday. I don't have time, but I'll make up for it on Sunday. I'll stand in the bathroom and brush my teeth for 1 entire hour.
What happens? Your teeth will literally rot and fall out. Your gums will be destroyed. That one massive session of brushing doesn't fix the damage of ignoring it the rest of the week.
Language learning is exactly the same. You cannot cram for fluency. You cannot binge watch fluency. It requires daily maintenance.
And we know our listeners are busy. You have demanding jobs, you have university classes, you have children to take care of. When we say practice every day, we aren't asking you to find an extra hour. Start incredibly small.
We are asking for 15 minutes.
15 minutes is waking up just a tiny bit earlier. 15 minutes is making a decision to spend 1 less session scrolling through social media videos on your lunch break.
You can replace scrolling on your phone with sitting in your car, recording your voice, talking about your day for 2 minutes, listening back to it, and then shadowing a 3-minute audio clip. Boom, you're done. You've sent the signal to your brain.
Start small, but be violently consistent with those small habits. If you do that, you will see real, undeniable progress in how quickly the English words come to your mouth.
So let's bring it all together. What is the grand takeaway from our discussion today? It's simply this: you have the power. You don't need to wait for a teacher to hold your hand.
You don't need to wait until you can afford a trip to an English-speaking country. You don't need to find a native speaker who has the time to talk to you. You are completely equipped to build an entire language laboratory right inside your own life.
You have your voice, you have a smartphone to record and listen. You have your imagination to create scenarios, and you have the world around you to describe. You are your own best speaking partner.
It's just about taking control and changing your daily habits. And as we finish up today's show, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to carry with you.
Think about the internal conversations you have with yourself in your native language. Every day you have thousands of thoughts. You plan your dinner, you worry about a text message, you notice a funny cloud in the sky, you complain about the weather.
Your brain never stops producing language.
Exactly. Your brain is an engine that is always running. If you can slowly begin to turn just a tiny fraction of those daily mundane thoughts into English, if you can just change the channel in your brain for a few minutes a day, something magical happens.
Your brain will stop treating English like a difficult academic subject that you have to sit down and study. It will start treating English as just another natural tool that you use to live your life. It becomes a part of who you are.
So here is our direct challenge to you. What is the very next thought you're going to have after this audio ends? What are you about to go do? Try having that exact thought right now in English.
That's a perfect place to leave it. Be your own teacher. Embrace the mistakes. And keep showing up every day. Thank you so much for joining us on ESL Listening Practice. We'll be right here with you next time. Keep talking to yourself, keep recording, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye, and happy practicing.